Go to the host menu. I'll have to make them smaller so menu is available. Module definitions. And I think it's initializing after me recompiling the module. And create a new definition. Let's call it OpenForce Settings. The folder name where I saved this is OpenForce Settings and a friendly name. Okay. Great. Now, we need to add two controls to this module definition. Okay. The first control will be the control that displays my settings, or the control that you will actually display on a web page. And that control would be display settings. It doesn't really need a key, it's just the default control, and the title would be probably view settings. Now, in order to install your custom settings to be accessible through the same DNN menu that I've shown earlier, you need to add a new control, and this one has to have the key of settings. And this is where you're going to select the control for updating the settings. All right, and that created my module. So let's come to a web page here and add this module to my page. And you'll see at this point there's nothing in that module setting because we haven't set any settings. There's nothing in the database yet that refers to this module. Now when I come here to settings, what you will see is I have these are the generic module settings that you see that always come expanded. But if you come to the bottom, you will see the update settings that I just added. All right, and I can select one of these radio buttons, but it will not affect what I did because I always saved it as a module setting. Okay, so I'm just going to call this standard DNN settings. And now you can see in this text box that it appeared. Now if I go back to my page and add a second instance of the same module, it will not have any settings because I saved them for that particular instance. Okay, so if the way you use site settings really is if you say, you know what, I have a lot of sites on this installation and I want to use a setting to set a default for any time anybody uses this module. That's when you would use site settings. Now let's go back to the code and look at a couple of things that we can do here. So one of the things that we can do is, I created a method called getSetting. Now why did I need to create that is because when I use a settings array, I'm only accessing the module settings and the tab module settings. I'm not accessing site settings. So I wanted a simple method that just allows me to go through that hierarchy and it will just do it for me. So instead of using, instead of using settings, I'm just going to call a method called getSettings. Now I could go really quickly to this method just to see what it does. This method basically does the same thing. It will go to the settings array and read the settings. If it doesn't find it in there, and if you set to include portal settings in there, it will go to read the portal settings first from the large database, the large settings database that I created table, and then from the regular, .NET settings table. So that's what just this method does automatically. All right? And now for updating the settings, let's add some code in here for that. Now, what would you need to do normally in here if you wanted to update site settings? You have to put some sort of an if statement in there. You'd have to say if, if the radio button is site settings, then save them as site settings. If it's module settings, then save them as module settings. Otherwise, save it as a tab module settings. So what I did is I just called another method called UpdateSettings, where I pass in an enumerated type that tells me what type of setting it is. All right. Oh, I called my constant something else. And just by doing that. Now, you'll notice a line that I put in here, use large settings. You can set that to true to use the new large settings, or set it to false to use the current settings. And to use the .NET new default settings. And so let's go back to the display. And just as before now, you can direct the settings to the proper place. So when I go in here and set update settings to go to the whole site, then that's what's going to happen. And we've already gone through this demo, so we don't need to go over it again. What are a couple of things that made our lives easier? One of the things that we've done is to add a couple of functions that collapse the default section that appears in the settings and expand hours. So, and of course, this code is available. It will be available for free on aeronuke.com. So now, if I come back and display the settings, one thing that you'll notice is that this section came collapsed, and the section that I want to normally access came expanded. So this is just a little, usability thing that will make the end user's life easier. All right. We're a little over the time, so these are the things that we covered. The methods that you need to override, and the API to read the settings, and then the API to update the settings. And again, some of the tips that we discussed are to create some level of insulation between, or abstraction between the .NET new core methods and classes and yours, and to remember to use a prefix for site settings, and use that code for expanding and collapsing sections. That's all I have. We're a little short on time, so if you have any questions, I can answer them afterwards. And thank you for coming, and enjoy your lunch.